this is an article from the Gothamist. All right. Judge puts onus on state to respond to New York City migrant crisis after right to shelter violation. New York City is getting hit with violations, ladies and gentlemen. You are in violation. Facts. Shout out to my man AB Promotions. It's never too early. Prime ribbed in a 40 ounce. Facts. Shout out to Christopher Perkins. All right, bro. Be safe out there. Judge puts onus on state to respond to New York City migrant crisis after right to shelter violation. Here's my question for you guys. What does that mean? This is important. And how many people knew that New York City was in a right to shelter violation? They're in trouble. They're in trouble on a right to shelter violation. Now, what is a right to shelter violation? What is this? We just talked about it. Okay. A New York State Supreme Court judge is ordering state officials to help address the city's increasingly difficult task of meeting its right to shelter obligation after scores of mostly adult male migrants spent several days this week sleeping outside a shelter intake center in Midtown. What do you guys think about that? So now this is coming from the judge of the court system, okay? A New York City Supreme Court judge is ordering state officials to help address the city's increasingly difficult task of meeting its right to shelter obligation. Now, how are they going to do that? And how many people knew about this? They're getting dictated to from the top down. They're getting dictated to from the top down. This is why it's so important to understand those laws. Would you guys agree? At an emergency hearing on Friday, requested by the Legal Aid Society, Judge Erica Edwards outlined a process in which the city would provide the state with a list of state and federal resources it requires to continue sheltering and caring for migrants. I want y'all to understand this. The New York Supreme Court ordered the state officials to continue housing migrants. Now, here's my question. How many people have heard about this? How many people have seen anything about this particular aspect of this situation being talked about in the mainstream media? That's my question. The order puts pressure on Governor Kathy Hochul, who has provided the city with financial support for migrants, but has yet to treat the year-long humanitarian crisis with the urgency that advocates argue that she should. The order also represents something of a vindication for Mayor Eric Adams, who has begged the state and federal leaders for more assistance in combating a crisis that has landed on the city's doorstep. So now here's the question. If this ruling vindicates Mayor Eric Adams, then why are they sitting there saying that Mayor Eric Adams isn't doing enough for these migrants? In the article that we just read, right? In that article that we just read, they were sitting there saying that Mayor Eric Adams isn't doing anything. and that he's being xenophobic and that he just doesn't want to deal with it. And now in this one, when we hear about the court ruling is saying that Eric Adams is being vindicated. So you know what we got to do? We got to ask the question that we always got to ask. Well, which one is it? Which one is it? That's the question. As we've known since the early days of this crisis, this is not just a New York emergency, but a crisis that requires support from the state and federal governments. Adams said in a statement following the hearing, "We need all of our partners to step up and treat this crisis like the emergency that it is, instead of abandoning New York City to provide shelter and care for more than 95,000 asylum seekers by ourselves." Now, here's my thing. That's kind of what New York City signed on for. Would you guys agree? Hey, I hear you, Eric Adams, but yo, bruh, this is what you signed on for, family. This is the bed that you made. Would you guys agree? This is the bed that Eric Adams made for himself. This is the bed that all these sanctuary cities made for themselves. The state must respond to the city's request by August 15th, one day before the next scheduled court date. So we're going to pay attention to this. There's supposed to be more court dates behind this. The state has not taken ownership of what is a statewide issue. Josh Goldfein, a staff attorney for legal aid, told reporters after the judge's decision. There are places around the state where they could be sheltered. There are labor shortages around the state. There are communities that would welcome people. Now, here's my question. Where are those communities and who are they? And what I want you guys to do is I want you to keep in the back of your head labor shortages. Bookmark that in your brain. Labor shortages. Okay? The bulk of the state's assistance has come in the form of roughly $1 billion in funding. Now, I want you guys to pay very close attention to this. All of this money is money that could have been down payments on reparations and everything else. And they're spending it in every possible way except for putting it in any form into FBA hands or FBA economy. Okay? The bulk of the state's assistance has come in the form of roughly $1 billion in funding. That's significantly more than what the federal government has offered to combat a national problem. It's also far less than the $4 billion that Adams has said will be required to meet the crisis. Hochul has also helped the city secure state-controlled sites such as former psychiatric facility in Queens to use as shelters. And again, we're going to be keeping our eye on the psychiatric facility in Queens because from what I understand, it was going down out there. It was going down out there. You know what I'm saying? But Goldfein said more could be done and that Hochul could issue an executive order requiring local municipalities and counties to shelter some of the migrants. Now, here's my question. Everything that they're suggesting, this is my question for you guys and my question for them if they happen to listen to this. Everything that's being suggested to be done for the migrants, my question is, why hasn't those things been done for the homeless that are already there who are Americans? That's my question. All of these wonderful suggestions, all of these smart ideas, all of these things that we want to do, that we claim we can do, right? Why haven't those things been suggested for Americans? What are you guys' thoughts? Because if you ask me, that should have happened, right? Based on the lawsuits generated by Adams' attempts to send migrants to Orange and Rockland counties, that would almost certainly spark a political firestorm for Hochul, who came close to losing to Republican Representative Lee Zeldin in last year's gubernatorial election. Legal Aid has been fighting the city's request to roll back the right to shelter, a unique 40-year-old mandate that requires the city to provide a bed to anyone who requests one. So I asked this question earlier, but now there's more people in the chat. So I want to make sure that the more people have an opportunity to talk about this. How many people knew that this court order existed in New York City? Were you aware that in New York City, it is the law that the city must provide a bed to anyone who requests one? If you knew that, give me a thumbs up. If you did not know that, then give me a thumbs down. Okay. The state is a party in the proceedings. It was one of the defendants along with the city under the original 1981 legal case that won the right to shelter for homeless New Yorkers. Now, this is for homeless New Yorkers. Homeless New Yorkers are citizens. If you're a New Yorker, you're a citizen. You know what I'm saying? Friday's court proceeding was triggered after Legal Aid filed a request for an emergency meeting with city and state officials after migrants were seen sleeping outside the city's intake center at the Roosevelt Hotel for days. So now here's my question. Nobody wanted to file any of these things when they see homeless people sleeping outside? Shout out to John. John says, check this out. Roughly 70K are homeless in New York. 56% are black, and they are trying to house 95K illegal immigrants and doing nothing for the homeless that they already have. Facts. Facts. So now here's my question. Who is pushing back on this? Who's getting in these people's faces at city council meetings and stuff like that and saying, hey, we need to address these issues right here. We need to deal with this stuff right here. Who's doing that? And shout out to Carla for hitting that Stream Elements bot. Adam said earlier this week that the situation was not going to improve. From this moment on, it's downhill, he said. There is no more room. After a letter on Wednesday from Legal Aid to the court seeking emergency hearing, city officials found temporary shelter for the migrants who had been sleeping outside. City officials found temporary shelter for the migrants who had been sleeping outside the Roosevelt Hotel after Legal Aid sought the emergency hearing in a letter to the court on Wednesday. The governor's office ticked off a list of ways it aided the city, including funding, assigning over 1,700 National Guard members to assist the migrants, use of state sites for shelters, and pressure on federal officials, but declined to comment on record, citing the pending litigation. All right. So now this is very interesting, right? And again, this kind of shows more of how New York City kind of put itself in this situation.